Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Technologists. I'm going to be interviewing and having a discussion with M. I met her on LinkedIn, and when I saw her page, she struck me as a multidisciplinary technologist. I'm excited for you to meet her. I'll let her tell everybody more about her experience, and let's see how this conversation goes. So without further ado, welcome M.
Hello everyone, it's so great to be having this conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. How was your day?
My day's been good so far. I've just had a 2-hour train journey from Wolverhampton, and so nothing too exciting so far, so I'm really looking forward to this chat.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because when I first came across your LinkedIn, it felt like a very deep yes. Like, this is somebody I'd love to get to know. I love how vulnerable you are with your experiences and your journey so far in tech. So that's how that's my experience of discovering you. I think one thing that I'd like to start with is the fact that you're very multidisciplinary. I see you're a politics grad who went into tech, content creator, you are the founder of She Chats Tech, you're also an entrepreneur. I love the way everything you're interested in just combines to flow into whatever it is you're working on. Tell me more about yourself. Who is M?
Yeah, I think like many people growing up, I always felt a lot of pressure to fit into societal expectations, especially as a young student. So I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer, but I've always been someone who, I guess, like you said, in terms of being multidisciplinary, I've always enjoyed lots of different things. So for example, like the content side, I've always sort of been creative in that sense, whether that's artistically, and like, for example, in the pandemic, I created an artist community to like showcase local artists, which was really cool. And so I think I've always been a kind of multifaceted person and had lots of different sort of energies to me, but I think I've always struggled with knowing how to kind of solidify what it is that I want to do. And so like in my third year of university, I had a sort of existential crisis, as I'm sure many people do, where I was kind of like, I don't really know what I want to do at the moment. Wasn't so sure on corporate law, and basically sort of really took the time, I think, with the pandemic to think about what I wanted to do. And that was kind of when I was exploring my options, started my master's at UCL, ended up interrupting my studies, but then at the time, and again, I always like have to like draw on this point, and I hate it because I don't want to glorify the fact that it was an ex-boyfriend that got me into tech, but it's just the way it was, and I wish it was like a cooler story, but seeing what he did, that kind of triggered my interest in tech. And then, like a lot of people, I've always been interested in tech, but again, just didn't quite know where I would fit into the industry at the time.
I actually have this quote you put on your LinkedIn, which says, "My interest in technology has remained constant throughout my life, but due to a lack of career exposure, I didn't believe I would have the skills to transition into the industry when I was younger." I think that's a lot of people, a lot of women, and a lot of people in general. They think it's out of their reach. They can't be that problem solver. It looks too hard, too unapproachable. It seems to be that you have overcome a lot of those beliefs to even come here and to say, wait, you're the person who is solving problems, who is in tech. So I'd like to know how what's your transition story? You know, at what point did you say, I've been interested in this and I'd like to pursue it?
So I think for me, it was kind of at the point at which I interrupted my master's, I was kind of left with a lot of time. And I think time is a great thing. And with that sort of space to just explore different options, I signed up to Code First Girls. So I did their Python and apps course, which was 8 weeks long. I really loved the course, doing the project at the end. And I think just kind of seeing that I could actually do it, like writing code, talking about the code and seeing it function was something that I felt was so far away from my capabilities because of my social sciences background. So that kind of triggered my first impulse in tech. And then from that point onwards, I was exploring boot camps that I could do. I heard about Bright Network's Technology Academy, so I applied to do that. And that's kind of when it just snowballed for me, really, in terms of my own experience and sort of gaining that confidence and really sort of leaning into exploring what felt like an unknown world at the time.
Yeah. And somewhere at that point, you started posting on She Chats Tech. You started creating content. What made you want to go into that? I also noticed that you have a passion for branding. He wants to be part of the interview.
He's the third guest.
You have a passion for branding, or rather it seems to be a skill you have, branding, having an eye for these things. At what point did you say, I want to share my story, I want to let other people know how this journey is going? And how did you integrate that into also being a software engineer career switcher?
Yeah, I think for me, I've always related to people that have been super authentic with their experiences. And I think all of us as people resonate with stories that we can relate to. When I graduated from my boot camp and I was finding it really difficult, I was feeling really stressed about finding my first job and not really knowing what I was doing and not feeling like I had community. And I was just a little bit like, I need help right now and I feel super lonely. It was from that point that I decided that I wanted to be more vocal about my experiences. And that was kind of when I thought, okay, well, what can I do practically to create something that can connect different people. In summer, I set up a LinkedIn page, created a logo on Canva. If you don't use Canva, use Canva. It's going to save your life. Such a good platform. So I created my first logo, set up the LinkedIn page. Literally at the beginning, it was just me asking my friends and like family members to go on the page. And then it kind of snowballed into becoming more of a community of different people. And so I think in terms of how that has then sort of lent itself, I guess, to being a software engineer as well, I think by being in the industry, I've been able to really understand myself, like the pain points and frustrations that I've experienced as someone working in the industry, but also kind of seeing that the industry has changed a lot, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And the experiences of women in the industry is positively changing. But again, the pace is still quite slow, and I still feel like there's a lot of diverse perspectives and experiences of women that are getting into the industry, either, you know, as a career changer or studying computer science. And I think really it's just been a process of kind of connecting with people and learning from different people's experiences, and helping people to kind of share their stories and be vulnerable, which I don't think we're taught enough in school. I don't think we're taught how to be vulnerable and to kind of let our guard down. And I think when we're online, we can think that we need to have this persona of who we are, which obviously is important in personal branding, but also I think people really resonate with the sort of the low lights, I guess. I was trying to think of something the opposite of highlights, and that was the first thing that came to my head. But like the things that aren't like the top 10%, people want to hear the kind of raw stories of like how you've achieved something without it seeming like, you know, it's just been an overnight success story.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that a lot. In transitioning, a lot of I feel like in transitioning, I've also realized that early on in your career, or a lot of younger people, even older people, people in general don't have everything figured out. And when they see people not being afraid to try, that's something that I used to be very hard on myself with. I wanted to have everything figured out. I wanted to know where I was going. Was I acting at my optimum level, or what I thought was my optimum level, without actually saying, it's okay that I'm trying, I'm showing up, I'm giving myself that grace. And I think showing up and talking about your journey gives other people permission to say, I'm also trying, you know, look at Em, she's doing this transition, you know, she's here now and she's allowing herself discover things. Curiosity plays a huge factor in this. How does your curiosity let you go into things you're interested in, things you might have done when you were younger? And how does that play a role in Em of now as a software engineer, as a founder, as an entrepreneur? How does that work for you?
Well, firstly, I wanted to like touch on the fact that you said about like giving yourself permission to sort of be at the different stages you are and giving yourself grace for learning and leaning in, because I think that in itself is such a beautiful statement, and that's something that I've definitely been experiencing more and more, is just with that curiosity, giving myself the permission to explore, to have different options, to have different routes. Growing up, I was in a single parent household. It was me and my mom. We have a very tight bond, and she was always someone that would say to me whenever I wanted to do something, and I had some pretty like wild ambitions as a child. I wanted to be like a fashion designer for Ted Baker. I like sent them my drawings to their design team, which is kind of wild for a 12-year-old, but she would always say to me, somebody's got to do it, why not you? And I feel like it's, isn't it? And I think like when you grow with someone who gives you that sort of like motto or phrase that you can live your life by, I think it's so powerful, because it just means that you don't feel limited by your own beliefs. And I think oftentimes people around you can kind of try and reduce your ambitions because maybe they haven't seen it be done before, so they're kind of almost, and it's a protective thing, but like they're trying to kind of you know, make you be more realistic. So I think having someone that always was a cheerleader for me has really helped me be curious and to kind of lean into those things that I've wanted to do. And then I think in terms of like the M of now, really, to be honest, I think I've just always been the kind of person that has been a bit delusional, maybe, to be honest. Honestly, like, I think if I wanted to message someone, I'll just send them a message, because my mentality is like the worst that can happen is I get a no, or like they don't read that message. And so I think, to be honest, in everything that I've done, I've always tried to view it from that like headspace, and to think if there's a reason that, and we had this conversation a little bit before, but like if there's a reason that I'm having this vision and this sort of motivation to start something, then that's because it's within my capabilities to start it and to do it, you know? And I think with starting the community, like it was an idea that I had, and I just thought, why not? Like the worst that can happen is like maybe it won't get off the ground, but like I've tried. And the same with the entrepreneurship and like signing up to be part of an accelerator program with Stemets, which is a great organization. And again, it was just like putting an application in. And I think, to be honest, the times when I've kind of not always had an expectation of things like having to play out a certain way, I've just kind of done it and just kind of relaxed about it. That's when I've seen the most success. Whereas whereas sometimes when I've been like overthinking something or like really wanting it to be something, if that makes sense, that's kind of when it hasn't always materialized in the ways that I've wanted it to. So I think sometimes with that curiosity and kind of like going out of your way to do things and being intentional is also about like relaxing into the process so that you can show up as your most authentic self. And I think that's when I've kind of achieved the better results, if you will, is when I felt really close to who I am as a person, which is a trial. It's not easy. It is not easy, but like it's been a process for me, and I think that's been what has allowed me to like take on different things and kind of enjoy the process of them all for their different strengths and values of doing them.
You've said so much, and I'm just in my head having bullet points for everything. The first thing is regarding your mom being the person supporting you and being that cheerleader. I think that's what a lot of people need. Not everyone has been in or grown up in circumstances where they had cheerleaders, but maybe they did, and they just went into educational systems, careers where nothing about them was valued, nothing about them was championed. I think community plays a huge role in changing that. And that's why, you know, communities like She Chat Tech, like Pivot Tech, communities where people come together and actually say, this person you want to be, we want to support that. We want to call you up higher. That's something we'll pick up later on in the conversation, but community is actually a big one for inspiring that curiosity and discovering who you are. When you talk about the not wanting things to be a particular way, we spoke about this before. It's not having all the answers. You know, I have been learning to be comfortable in uncertainty. This transition has been the most fulfilling thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most uncertain. Like I have to take every day a step at a time to say, what am I interested in now? And it's okay if I don't see it fitting into this picture that I might have seen outside. I'm trying to be the precedent for what I want, and I'm trying to let my interests guide me to where that's going to be. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to it 100%. And I think when you take that decision to change your career, that in and of itself is such a massive leap into the unknown. It's such a big risk in a lot of ways, because like people can leave a job that might be, you know, they're earning a certain salary and then they're going into tech and they don't know because they're learning from scratch all over again. Like, for me, it's kind of been a continual process of just like tapping into myself, like what am I enjoying about this now, like and almost like from a mindfulness perspective, like making sure that I feel as closely aligned to like what I want to be doing, which is kind of ultimately what led me to kind of, you know, leaving my current role, which I know we're going to discuss later on.
Thank you for bringing it up.
But like that was something that I had to consider, and I think again, we're not often told or raised in a way that allows us to enjoy those unknowns, because a lot of the time I think those unknowns we're socialized into find them really scary. Like we should have our career lined out, we should have like what we want to do lined out, and so I think it's really important to sort of lean into that, and that's something that I've been learning to enjoy as I've transitioned.
Again, I really like talking to you. I really like talking to you because it's so much that resonates with me and that I know will resonate with other people. Let's talk about you getting your graduate role. I know you had an internship at this company and then you became a graduate iOS developer. It was a shock to me when I saw that you had put yourself back out there as open to work. You know, and when we originally connected, I think that was one of the first things I asked, because I hadn't seen it done somewhere that someone would transition into tech, would get a role and say, this isn't quite for me. It felt like a dissonance inside you, like it doesn't quite resonate with you. What made you see, so these are the questions that I'm asking to phrase this response. What made you realize what you wanted, and how were you aware that that wasn't it? And at what point did you say, I'm going to bet on myself and not hold on to this thing that gives me some security now, but I'll keep moving in the direction of what will be satisfying to me?
Obviously, when I went into the role, I was an intern, then transitioned into the graduate role. I was learning a totally new programming language that I hadn't done before. So
which one was that?
It was Swift.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. I enjoyed learning it, but I think very quickly with programming languages, you can kind of tell if it's something that you feel you can kind of understand and learn over a period of time, or if it's something that just feels like it's really hard to describe. It's almost like there's just like it's not clicking, you know. I'm trying to fit a square in like a circular hole, and I think for a while I tried to kind of think, you know, is this something that if I just keep working harder and harder at it, it's going to start to click more, and it wasn't. And at a point you kind of have to self-evaluate, like, is this worth fighting for, or is the fight for this taking me further away from who I am as a person, if that makes sense. And I think I just realized that by trying to make this language work for me and the role work for me, it was kind of taking me further away from who I was, and I felt kind of this pressure to be the graduate developer at the company, and then also balance the other things on the side that bring me a lot of joy, like She Chats Tech and like my you know, startup idea. And I think like when you're trying to balance, and it's a very fine balance when you're in a corporate environment, because you've got who you are as a person, and you've got the company values and the role that you're doing, and also other things that you might do that might bring you joy, but it's a very fine balance between both. I think at the point at which I was kind of having reviews with my colleagues and sort of discussing things more and more, I sort of just had to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I love the people, I really enjoy, you know, the opportunity that I've had to learn and be on this program, but I just feel like I'm finding it so difficult And I didn't know if it was just iOS development that I was finding difficult, but I think I just realized that I wasn't the right fit for the role or even the company at that point. And I had to sort of take that step to kind of say, you know what, I actually need to sort of have some time to regroup with myself and consider what it is that I'm interested in. So like, you know, I think we've had conversations about like tech for good and those sorts of things. Like I'm really interested in, you know, tech for good startups. And I think for me, it was that realization that I really have to feel like my values align with the work that I'm doing in order for me to do the job, which obviously isn't always easy to find, but for me, like that was kind of the learning process that I had through working, was I need something that can also link to my values and also be more people centered as well. And I think that was a biggie for me, was like I need something where all of these soft skills that I have that feel so natural to me, like I'm, you know, a natural communicator and collaborator, and you know the reality is that like as a developer sometimes you're not always going to have that sort of those, I don't know, softer skills in terms of like people management and relationships as much as the technical side, because that's what you're doing on the day to day. And so for me it was just kind of like that slow process of realizing that I think I need something that's a little bit more hybrid in terms of my skill set.
I wouldn't think more hybrid in terms of your skill set, but I would think more one that uses you, like fully you, everything that you are. And I think this mentality you've gotten can almost only come through the journey, because you transition, you start feeling that alignment with what you're interested in. You start working on what you're interested in, and you get a job and it doesn't feel the same way. You're not, like I used the term before that when I'm walking in my purpose, it feels like things are just pouring out of me. It feels so aligned. What you're doing comes naturally and you're excited to do it. I can relate to this because I used to work in finance, and when I was in finance, a lot of the things that made me me, that I was passionate about, I had to leave behind to focus on this one role. So in my transition, I didn't want to slip into I am now a software developer. This is my bread and butter, my soul. I didn't want to just fall down this rabbit hole of tying my identity to this one phrase when I had so many other things that I was interested in and it was me. You know, so it's very similar, where sometimes I know when I'm applying to jobs just because I want to have the security of a job. And I remember the first time I read a company's job posting that I felt fully aligned with their mission. It's Notion, by the way. So if you're seeing this video, I want to work with you. It's Notion. And they have this passion for using software to make tool making ubiquitous. I love Notion. I love using the platform. I never actually thought of working there. I just thought this is a really cool app. But when I saw that and I checked their website, it felt like this is a mission I could get behind. So I get what you say when you're like, I like you want to work somewhere where the mission aligns with yours, because then it's not work. We spend so much time working, and it's too much time for us to kind of enjoy what we do, or to just have it to pay bills, and then on the weekend we do what we're really interested in. I wonder how we can inspire more people to say, these are the things I'm interested in. I want to move in that fullness of who I am and position myself to companies in that way. And on the other hand, it's how can companies say, how do we take M and use everything she has to give? Because that's when you get people who are joining in on this mission and pushing the company's values, the company's products on their own. I just think like a lot of the experiences you have are they are the journey you go through or you go on to find yourself and to find your meaning in the world. And it just speaks to authenticity. I wonder how you handle pivoting. Because if you thought you were going to work as a graduate iOS developer, how do you sit down and say, okay, this isn't working, let me do something else? Are there any beliefs that you have to overcome in the sense that, am I good enough if I can't do this? You know, is it a failure to use the word to say I'm not a good fit? Because you saying that shows a lot of self-awareness, but also you're gentle towards yourself to not beat yourself up about it. Like, how do you think about that?
It's difficult, you know, when you go into a job and you've kind of really romanticized, I think, the role, you know, you've spent ages learning, and then you go into it and you kind of imagine yourself being there for years, and then you reach a point where you're like, I actually just don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
There's always that sort of mental barrier and block of like, is this me just kind of throwing in the towel before I've pushed through to see if I can do it? Is this coming from a place where I genuinely think I can't do it? You have to have that. It's like you said, you have to have the self-awareness. You have to know yourself enough to know that the decisions you're making are coming from a place of genuinity. Sorry, I like butchered saying that word, but
that's okay.
It's coming from a genuine place, basically. And I think for me, like, because I've done a lot of self-work over the years, I know when those doubts and fears are coming from a genuine place versus like a kind of, I'm just scared, but I just need to sort of go through the process and see it through. And so I think there's always those self-doubts, and there's always that sort of, I hate the word imposter syndrome, but there's always that mental back and forth between sort of thinking, you know, have I failed because I couldn't do this? But I'm also telling people to get into tech. I'm like promoting people to get into tech, and I myself am sort of faltering at the first hurdle. But I think you have to have maturity at the end of the day, and I think everything that I've done where I've pivoted or failed or, you know, failed in inverted commas, I've sort of had to go through that to get to harvest rewards, if that makes sense. Every struggle that I've had or moment when I've doubted myself or had to overcome something has always led to better opportunity. And so I think to a point you have to embrace those pivots, but also not just let yourself continue pivoting without committing, if that makes sense. Which is why I did this. I knew that I was always interested in the startup and like product space and like wanting to use my skills in a broader technological sense rather than it just being development. That I'd always been there, even though I love development, like I'd always been very like product and strategy, and like I'd always been interested in that. It's not like this came from nowhere. But sometimes, you know, even now, like with job searching, I'm still kind of like, oh, I do need to commit to something at some point. Like, I need to pay bills, or, you know, I'll need to move if I want to move back to London. Like, they're all the logisticals, right? So I think with pivoting, I've done it when I've been at a point when I'm like, I can't go on like this, if that makes sense. Like, it's reached that point. It's always been intentional. I've tried to be as intentional as possible and really consider why I'm doing it and evaluate how I feel after I've made that change to see like if it feels like I'm more closely aligned with who I am after making that decision.
I think what this does to a lot of us, or I wouldn't say everyone, a lot of us, is that it makes us very self-aware. And that's something that's necessary for navigating periods of uncertainty. And it's funny because we always say, you know, that opportunity that didn't pan out, that pivot has led to bringing me here. But then we didn't always see it that way. What I like now is that with each redirection, I see how it's bringing me closer to what I want to do. And when I tell people now about how I transitioned, I always tell them, look, you see me here, but you don't see the journey I went through. At several points, I had different things I was interested in, but I said, what's the base thing I want to know? I want to know how to code. I want to know how technology works. So, okay, that's the basic thing. But then what are these other interests that I have? I always thought it was a one or. But in this journey, I've realized it's not a one or, it's just a what is Nkechi? What do I want to do? It's similar to yours in the sense that I love coding. I love knowing how technology works, but I don't want my beginning and end to just be in a terminal. I don't want to just write code for the sake of it. So hearing you say you like working on product, on strategy, I enjoy your content. I love the way you put out content, you share yourself. There is a positioning for that is uniquely you, and it's so similar to wanting to just be, in fact, it's just multidisciplinary. Like, that's just the term that I've come up with, because on my own side, last year, and I wrote an article, an essay about it, because I had gone for Product Con and I had fully embraced this multidisciplinary technologist working as a back-end engineer. And I got so many, wow, interesting, what's that? And the next day I wrote this article. And it was just me realizing that in my transition, I didn't want to do what I did in finance, which was, I am a banker and this is all I do.
Yeah.
I was also interested in strategy, but when I would go for tech meetups, all that would be talked about is just the technical side. And when I would go for product meetups, I mean, I wouldn't know about how the tech worked. And when I used to work in finance, I got tired of just valuing companies and never seeing how they were built or how they're talking to users. So I'm realizing that these things that I'm interested in, they're not just quirks or random things I should get out of my head. They're kind of pointers in the direction I should be going in. I'd like to know what you are interested in and how you see that fitting into the world where M is M and she's just, everything is flowing out of her. She's just working as M.
First off, I just love the entire explanation you gave to that question on your end, and not wanting to just fit one identity, because that's something that resonates so much.
Yes, I'm happy to hear that.
But in terms of what is M, how do I fit into a world where I'm kind of just outpouring the energy that feels most me? I mean, at the core, I think I'm just a people person. I love people, knowing people, understanding people, their needs. And I think that's always been something that's been the center of my life, whether that's been in politics as an undergrad, wanting to understand the ways in which decisions can impact on people's lives, or the motivations between decision makers, and then sort of with Latin American studies that I did at UCL, again, it was all about people and culture and understanding the nuances and the differences that make us all unique. And then getting into tech and starting the community, again, it's all been rooted with people as well, and sort of access to opportunity. That's been a big thing for me, has been increasing access and empowering people to find their fit. So that's always been something that I've been super motivated by. And I think you, on sort of the entrepreneurial business side, I've always been fascinated with how companies work. And especially nowadays in a world where marketing is so important, and it's not even about spending loads of money on marketing, it's about how you can be smart with it to engage people. And I think social media and that sort of content creation side is something that I really enjoy as almost an experimentation. How can I engage with people in a way that makes it feel like they know me and they can learn things, and sort of analysing that. And also with other brands as well, I love just seeing the branding and marketing that companies have. There's a company called Perfected. They do these green tea matcha energy drinks, and their marketing is so cool. And I think I'm just fascinated.
I need to make a note of that.
It's a great company. And I'm fascinated by that, and so that's something that I'm really interested in. I think in a dream world, I will be able to do my writing, because I'm a massive writer on the side, which maybe not everyone knows, but I spend a lot of time writing, because that's, for me, is the...
Where do you write? Is it public or privately?
It's private. Okay. I do have a book proposal. That's going. It's kind of very private at the moment, but it's just kind of helps me get my creative energy out. In a dream world, I'd be writing. I'd love to still continue with the community and see where that could take me, because I think sometimes you start something, you just don't know what it's going to turn into. And I'm loving that process of iterating on it and getting to know more and more women through that. And the startup idea that I have to kind of increase job accessibility is something that I'm super passionate about as a working class person that's gone on their own journey. That's something that I also really want to be able to devote more time and energy into from the technology perspective, but also just seeing how I can build a product that can really help people. And I think for me, that's kind of my purpose, is to help other people and to motivate them. I think that's what I realize now, is it's not, like you said, these aren't just quirks about me. This is me. This is who I am.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly.
It's a feature. It's really nice hearing this and even talking about it, because it resonates so deeply with me, within me. I love hearing it. Regarding your startup, could you tell us more about how you're approaching getting ideas for this startup? Do you already have an idea? You don't have to say it, but just frame your thinking regarding, how business M is thinking, how the strategy founder M is thinking.
I'm still learning, so I'll just
I love that, because we don't have everything figured out. Some people have more knowledge of what they're doing. Maybe someone has everything figured out. I won't say nobody does, but I love that you say you're still learning, and because that's okay. So just tell us.
I'll do a little stream of conscious.
Yes, please.
So my thought process has been a little bit scattered. I'm a bit of a scatterbrain sometimes, and I can visualize what the product looks like, but it's like, how do I get the technology side of that to match up with my own visions in my head? And also part of that is not wanting to rush to build something before you actually know if there's a need for it. If people are actually going to see this and think, is this something that I would get value from? And that's why I put the survey out, because I've been a bit of a perfectionist with it and kind of delayed the process. But I was like, if I don't get this out now and start to get to know people and what they're wanting and their own experiences, then I'll never learn like what could potentially be a good fit for this product. I've kind of got the idea in my head of how I want it to be, but I want to use insights to guide that, because again, I don't want to build something that is just my idea that isn't backed by the user engagement, because ultimately it's not going anywhere if people aren't on the platform. So the survey is out. I'm going to collect feedback, get more insights on that perspective, and kind of take it from there really. But I'm sort of wanting to take it slowly so that I don't rush into building it and then it not being what it was set out to be, but also wanting to not delay the process by being a perfectionist. So I'm kind of trying to figure out the right balance. And also just getting advice from people as well, to be honest. The founder community is a really lovely one, and there are great people out there that are very willing to have conversations and to help you out, which for me has been so useful, because I've never embarked on something like this before. And it's kind of daunting to just get started, because again, it's like not letting yourself be overcome by the thoughts that like, someone like me can't do this, which is so easy to fall into the trap of. So it's a process that I'm learning, and the survey for me right now is a first step to kind of help with the other areas.
It's funny, because before you decided to switch, would you have considered yourself starting a business?
It's a good question.
The reason why I ask this is that sometimes the steps we take now are just building blocks for something in the future. Me just deciding this January to just put out content for Pivot Tech, to start talking to people, to start writing. Last year I would write a few posts on Medium, and I wouldn't really share it around. I didn't put it on my LinkedIn. I was almost hiding. I put a few posts here and there, and it's now those posts, the writing I did there, the stream of consciousness, the way I articulated my thoughts when no one was listening, it's helped me now. And even the things I'm doing now, I see how they're setting me up for bigger things, where I'm able to say, I did that before. I'm not so scared, because I know it's just fear. I need to just move through it. I ask this question to see if you see that things you've done have helped set you up for now, where you're moving in this founder space? It's a really open-ended question, but it's something I wonder what you think about.
It's so weird, right? When it's like there are moments in your life where you were taking action or doing things and you never deeped it at the time. You're just like, oh, I'm just doing this. Like me, I had a vegan food account. I had like at the time like 2,000 followers or something. It wasn't massive, but I would do random collaborations with companies. And it was just me posting my food and like communicating with people. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it's like, that was me building a community. It was a small one, but like that was a seed that was planted. Or me doing, you know, blogging, and I'd have my little blog during lockdown where I'd write about how I was feeling. And I don't know, I was the first non-law student to get a position on the law committee at Bristol, which was like such a long time ago now, because I'm 25, and it's like, oh my gosh, that was ages ago. But I think just...
How old were you when...
I was 19 at the time.
That's not that far
so it was like 6 years. It's okay. It's okay. But it's like those moments when it's like you zoom out and you're kind of like, oh, that was quite bold of me to sort of want to be on this committee when I wasn't a law student, and it was kind of a very tight-knit community of like law students. And I think all of those little moments in isolation, you think, oh, you know, that's just one event. But when you piece it all together, it's like the energy of who I am or who I'm trying to be. And I think that's still an evolving process. Like, who's to say in 5 years' time, I won't look back and think, oh, She Chats Tech or this startup I do is what led to this, because I don't know that. And I think that's kind of the beauty of growing and taking those risks and just appreciating and reflecting on like what you've done, which I think because of transitioning into a new industry, I've had a lot of time for reflection, because I've sort of thought about what motivated me to do that. And I remember seeing a Code First Girls Facebook post at university, and I didn't do it because I was like, oh, you know, I don't think that I'm a politics student. I don't think I should do this course.
Wow.
And literally, you know, years later, and I was doing the Code First Girls course, and it's just those weird synchronicities that I think you look back and think, maybe the me in that moment didn't feel like brave enough to take that step, but just knowing that like the woman she kind of grew into did take that step, for me, it's so important in terms of my own self-awareness. So I think definitely every small moment leads to whatever it is you become.
Wow. Like, wow. Yeah. That feels so similar to my journey. You know, diverse experiences, yet the core is the same. Sometimes you don't find yourself till you've gotten to the age where you have the agency to say, I'm going to find myself. And I'm happy I got to have you here to share this story with people. We'll talk a bit about where you are at the moment, what you're working on, maybe what projects you're interested in, whether that's technical or more with your community. We know you're working on a startup now. You're getting ideas, you're talking to people, like in that discovery phase. But what are you doing right now? What is M of this moment doing that could set up future M?
Well, right now I'm looking for work, so that's the first thing. Trying to see what job roles would be the right fit for me. So I'm exploring the tech product space. So at the moment, just trying to plant those seeds, get those conversations with people in that space, and finding companies that I think would be the right fit for me and making those connections. So I'm trying to be very intentional at the moment with what I'm doing on that front. I think also just having the time now to explore what I want to do has allowed me to put more work into the community, which is always great, because it was a lot balancing that with work and everything and my self-care as well. So it's nice to have more time for that as well. And with the startup, again, I think since leaving work, even though it was a risk and like I wouldn't advise that people just like do that if you don't have like the security to do it, but I think just having that clarity of my mind now to work on things without the fog of how I was feeling with the role has like really helped me now in terms of the startup idea. And I just feel like I have that energy. So
Okay.
I'm putting the energy into the startup. I'm also trying to be realistic and think that, you know, I also need a job, because many people like bootstrap, or, you know, they'll work and then save their money towards the startup idea. So that's kind of my goal right now. So I'm in that sort of, I don't know, it's a weird state to be in where I'm intentional about what I'm wanting, but I'm also just kind of embracing this period of being settled back in my like family home, enjoying that space and that safety. Nice. I also really want to go traveling at some point this year, because I feel like I really have needed that sort of break and that sort of sense of self-discovery by being somewhere that's not home. So that's something that I intentionally want to do this year. And just enjoying the process and being present. I think I've spent a lot of my time in my life future thinking, always thinking ahead. So now I'm just trying to learn how to be more grounded in the moment and just enjoying life as it's happening.
Yeah. That's a good way to wrap it up. Just being present, being in the moment. It speaks to two things I have really held on to in my journey. It's curiosity and trust. Because I don't know what happens tomorrow. But I'm allowing myself to have interests, to do things, to be good at what I'm good at, to get good at things I want to get good at, and to trust that somewhere along the line the dots will connect. And it most likely will only be when I look backwards. I can't predict everything. But I like that it's the awareness. Just being present even helps with the awareness. What am I feeling? Am I moving closer to who I am? Or is chasing after this taking me away from who I am? It's been amazing having you around. It's been amazing talking to you. I wish you all the best. I'm going to share her community on this page, She Chats Tech. And even apart from her community, please, her page herself. Just how she shows up authentically. I think even a final note is showing up authentically helps you connect with other people.
Absolutely.
Who feel the same way that you feel, who think the same things, and not like an echo chamber, but just that similarity of experiences and passions. But thank you so much for being on this, on this channel. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best. So thank you everyone for watching. And we will see on another episode of Conversations with Technologists. Bye. Do I let the cat out?
It's just at the exact moment.